Hi, this episode is part of the Web Application Security Testing series. I'm excited about reading this article. The title is From Threat Models to Red Team Dimensions. It's published on Cyberpower Talanoia on Medium. That's my channel there. And let's get right to it. I will get on with the map. It's a mind map I drew of the article, as everything on this podcast. We'll be going through forms of testing here, the professional layer of the security subculture. We'll be going through the multidimensional aspects of threat modeling, how it relates to SSDLC and the development life cycle there of the tester world, the tools and the application, going through security audit, and then the bridge to vulnerability assessments to penetration testing, which can be outsourced, into offensive red teaming with blue and purple teams. As you see here on the map visually, that can't be done on audio, but once you can see that all this field is in one space designated. And then somewhere outside of this model there, we have the organization goals and the resources available for code review, for awareness and training, for SOC monitoring, and for compliance. And I've underlined here the timing, and all this relates. So the time that an organization has with its goals and resources, it's relatable to the team size, to the objective, the scope, and the methodology applied. And then so, as always on every map, I also try to place Bitcoin, which is here in the multidimensional realm of threat modeling. I believe that's where Bitcoin sits the greatest on this in this article's dimension. And then Recon, which we specialize in, our info gathering here with bug bounty hunting, sits just below the specialization of vulnerability assessments. And that's about it for this article. Let's get to it. And here it is. From threat models to red team dimensions. This article is a review of popular methodologies for assessing the security of IT systems, and in particular, the field of web applications. Main scope: threat modeling, security audits, vulnerability assessment, automated and manual, penetration testing, red teaming. And that was that area on the diagram. There's a sequential order of methodologies, and each has varying objectives, scope, timing, and team size. Yeah, so that is the progression there. Again, that's the same here. I'll on the visual part of the podcast, I'm going to show what we're showing here, that this is this area here. This is the progression. And then, so in the article, as you see, 1, threat modeling before development based on need, which is based on care. 2, development, SSDLC. 3, security audit after development. 4, vulnerability assessment without details for low-lying fruit. 5, pentesting, outsource after a few vulnerability assessments, vulnerability assessment iterations rather. Red team with blue and purple attempts to exploit the findings of a vulnerability scan and assessment. The objective of the outsourcing is to emulate an attacker in order to verify the effectiveness of defensive mechanisms and to chain vulnerabilities with additional elements in order to obtain the desired effect, considering meter attack. That framework. Testing. A test is an action to demonstrate that an application meets the security requirements of its stakeholders. The testing model consists of tester, performing the testing activities, tools and methodology, application, the black box to test. Web AppSec testing. All of the activities mentioned, threat modeling, security audits, vulnerability assessment, automated and manual, penetration testing, and red teaming are considered forms of testing in the context of web application security. However, they differ in their specific objectives, scope, methodologies, timing, and team size. So we're going to get into each one of these. So threat modeling. Involves analyzing the architecture and design of a system to identify potential security threats and vulnerabilities. Aims to proactively identify and mitigate risks by assessing the system's assets, potential attack vectors, and potential impacts. It doesn't involve hands-on testing. It plays a crucial role in shaping the security measures and priorities for a web application. Primarily a manual process that involves identifying and analyzing threats to a web application. There's some tools available to assist with specific aspects, such as data, flow diagramming, or threat library management. And the overall process heavily relies on human expertise and judgment. They focus on analyzing the entire web application system, architecture, components, data flows, interactions, considers potential threats, attack vectors, and vulnerabilities at each stage of the application's lifecycle. It's typically conducted during the early stages. It is an iterative process that can span a few days to several weeks, depending on the size and complexity. The time frame involves identifying assets, defining the application's architecture, analyzing potential threats, and mitigating risks. It can be conducted by a small team consisting of security architect, system architect, application dev, and a small matters expert, SME, from the business or operations team. For larger and complex applications, the team may include additional specialists, analysts, or consultants with expertise in threat modeling in particular. Next up, security audits. Security audits are systematic assessments of an application's security controls, policies, and processes. They evaluate whether the implemented security measures align with industry best practices, compliance requirements, and organizational policies. Security audits typically involve reviewing docs, conducting interviews, examining configurations, and settings to identify gaps and vulnerabilities and ensure compliance with relevant security standards or frameworks. Points. An audit can benefit from both manual and automated approaches. Automated tools can assist in scanning for known vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and compliance violations. The interpretation and validation of the audit results typically require human intervention, analysis, and validation. Encompasses a comprehensive review of the web application's infrastructure, configurations, policies, and practices. This includes examining network architecture, server configurations, access controls, authentication mechanisms, data storage, encryption, logging, and compliance with security standards. Comprehensive assessments that typically span several weeks to months. The time frame depends on the size of the application, the depth of the audit, and the availability of resources. Audits involve reviewing policies, configurations, interviews, examining infrastructure, code, documenting findings. This typically involves a team of security professionals with expertise in different domains such as network security, application security, infrastructure security, and compliance. The size of the team can range from a small one of 2 to 3 individuals to larger teams consisting of multiple specialists for comprehensive audits. Next up, vulnerability assessment. This refers to the process of identifying and quantifying vulnerabilities in a web application. It can be performed using automated tools like scanners or through manual testing techniques for a more in-depth analysis of the application's code, configurations, and infrastructure to uncover complex or logic-based weaknesses. The objective is to identify known vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, or weak security controls that could be exploited by attackers. The output of a vulnerability assessment is a list of identified vulnerabilities along with their severity ratings and recommended remediation actions. Little subpoints here. This can be performed using a combo of automated scanning tools and manual testing techniques. Right, so a note here from the top of my head that vulnerability scans uncover known vulnerabilities. This is very important that they're known already. Whereas doing manual Recon and assessments of vulnerabilities uncovers perhaps unknown vulnerabilities that can't be done through a scan. And most companies scan their applications anyways at some point. So just doing scanning doesn't work necessarily. So yeah, automated vulnerability scanners can efficiently identify a wide range of common vulnerabilities, while manual testing allows for in-depth analysis, verification, and identify of more complex or business logic-related vulnerabilities. Both automated and manual vulnerability assessments aim to identify vulns within the web application and associated components. This involves analyzing the application's source code, APIs, databases, server configurations, and other elements to uncover common vulnerabilities such as cross-site scripting, XSS, SQL injection, which is more of an older vulnerability, although it widely still exists, insecure direct object references, and more. Those are IDORs. The time frame for vulnerability assessments varies based on the size and complexity of the web application. Automated scans can be completed within hours or days, depending on the scan depth and number of assets. Manual vulnerability assessments may take days to weeks, and this depends. It depends on the extent of the testing, identification of complex vulns, and verification of findings. For automated vuln assessments, a single security professional or small team can handle the scanning and analysis of results. Manual vulnerability assessments may require a larger team, depending on the size and the depth required. The team may include security analysts, penetration testers, and specialists in specific areas such as code review or configuration assessment. Next up is penetration testing. Pentesting, or ethical hacking, involves actively simulating real-world attacks on a web application to identify vulnerabilities and validate the effectiveness of security measures. It combines automated scanning tools with manual testing techniques to discover and exploit vulnerabilities. The goal is to assess the security posture of the application by attempting to breach its defenses and gain unauthorized access or perform malicious activities in order to provide actionable recommendations for remediation. And here are some subpoints for penetration testing. It combines both manual automated approaches, automated tools for initial recon, scanning, and vulnerability identification. Manual testing techniques such as targeted exploitation, privilege escalation, and proof of concept (POC) dev are essential to validate the identified vulns and assess the potential impact. Pentesting focuses on actively exploiting vulnerabilities in the application, simulating real-world attacks to identify weaknesses in the application's defenses. Testers attempt to gain unauthorized access, escalate those privileges, manipulate data, and perform various attack scenarios to assess the effectiveness of security controls. The time frame for a pen test depends on the scope, complexity, and objectives, but it can range from a few days for a focus test on specific functionalities to several weeks for a comprehensive assessment of the entire web application. The duration also depends on the availability of resources and coordination required. The size of a pen test team can vary depending on the scope and objectives. Typically, a team consists of 2 or more individuals, including experienced pen testers, NetSec specialists, and AppSec experts. The team may also include support staff to manage logistics, documentation, and coordination with the dev team. Next up, perhaps finally, from the professional business layers, we don't know about the secret ones. Perhaps we'll talk about those another time, but red teaming is an advanced form of security testing that goes beyond traditional pen testing. It involves simulated targeted attacks using a combination of technical and non-technical means, including social engineering, physical security testing, and complex attack scenarios. Red teaming focuses on assessing the overall effectiveness of an organization's security measures, including detection and response capabilities, by emulating the tactics, techniques, and procedures, the TTPs, of real adversaries. The objective is to identify potential security weaknesses that might go undetected through traditional security assessments. Points of red teaming. Engagements heavily rely on manual techniques and human expertise to simulate real-world attacks and test the effectiveness of an organization's security controls. Some tools can aid in the recon and initial info gathering phase. The core activities of red teaming, such as social engineering, physical testing, and complex attack simulations, these require a high degree of manual involvement. Red teaming takes a holistic approach and considers the entire web application system, including the app, infrastructure, network, people, and processes. It involves comprehensive testing to identify those vulnerabilities and weaknesses that may go undetected by traditional security assessments. Often involves a combo of recon, social engineering, pen testing, and advanced attack simulations. Typically, these are long-term projects that span from weeks to months, The time frame varies based on the goals, complexity, and depth of the engagement. Red teaming involves multiple phases, including Recon, planning, testing, and reporting. The duration allows for in-depth analysis, advanced attack simulations, and collaboration with the organization's security team. Often involves a larger team, including specialized security professionals with diverse skills and expertise. The team may consist of pen testers, threat intelligence analysts, social engineers, network security specialists, and AppSec experts. The size of the team can vary significantly depending on the complexity and duration of the engagement. So now, we're getting into the conclusions. While these activities are all part of the broader testing process in web application security, they differ in terms of their goals, approaches, and depth of testing. Organizations often employ a combo of these activities to comprehensively assess and improve the security posture of their web applications. These approaches examine various aspects of the web application system, including architecture, configurations, code, infrastructure, network, people, and processes, to identify vulns, weaknesses, and potential attack vectors. Automation plays a significant role in web app security testing, but its extent varies across different activities. A vulnerability assessment and security audit is easier to automate than a pen test or threat model. It's worth noting that while automation can enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of web app sec testing, it cannot replace human intelligence, creativity, and critical thinking. Manual testing and analysis are crucial for uncovering nuanced vulnerabilities, identifying logical flaws, and providing a comprehensive understanding of the security posture of the web application. Therefore, a combination of automation and manual testing is typically employed to achieve the best results in web application security testing. In web AppSec testing, the timeframes for each activity can vary depending on the scope, complexity, and objectives of the testing. It's important to note that the timeframes and team sizes mentioned are general estimates and can vary based on specific project requirements, resources, and the level of detail desired in the testing activities. A little bit more on secure practices now. The following are other examples of the various approaches and methods used in security assessments. The specific combinations of methods will be used and depend on the organization's goals, resources, and the nature of the web application being assessed. For example, there's security code review, reviewing the source code of an application to identify security vulns and weaknesses. There is system architecture review, which is evaluating the overall security architecture of a system to ensure it aligns with best practices and meets security requirements. As you remember from other episodes, architecture is how it's built. Security awareness training. So educating users and employees about security best practices, common threats, and how to protect sensitive information. There is security incident response. This is establishing processes and procedures to detect, respond to, and mitigate security incidents and breaches. There is a security configuration management, which is ensuring that systems and devices are properly configured with secure settings and configurations. Compliance assessments. These assess systems against regulatory and industry-specific security standards to ensure compliance with relevant requirements. There's threat intelligence monitoring. Monitor and analyze emerging threats and vulns to proactively identify and address potential risks. There's security governance and risk management. There's security operations center monitoring. There's secure software development lifecycle itself. So all these in combination or standalone depend on the organization of, behind the web application being created. So, on a final note here, gratitude. I wrote this with the knowledge from my excellent school course instructors such as AD from bezpiecznikod.pl and select books, some experience, my own mind maps, and ChatGPT. The bridge dimensions I wish to present are my work as part of a deep dive into specific upcoming articles about vulnerability assessments through black box stealth Recon. Well, I hope this episode gave you some insight into threat modeling and the tester tools and methodologies. I'm going to bring up the map again just for a final moment here. We went through all this, that main area, the difference between threat modeling, the SSDLC development whole cycle, and then a security audit that comes after, a vulnerability assessment afterwards, potential pen test and potential red teaming afterwards. And so inside the vulnerability assessment is more of the Recon, right? And then a little bit about the organization and how SOC, Security Operations Center, monitoring is a part of perhaps the awareness and training within the organization, which has certain time to work on everything, a certain team size, objectives, scopes, and methodologies. And all this begins to make sense as you work through it. And if you enjoyed this coming together of all these ideas through my presentation, you can offer support through NOSTR or Fountain, and also have a look at the show notes wherever you are. And I'll see you at the meetups.